welcome to the podcast, Celebrating Differences. I'm your host, Tyree. Celebrating Differences is an initiative of WAAO Inc., a nonprofit chartered to foster community. WAAO, WAAO, stands for We Are All One. So today is episode 89 of the podcast, and we're going to be talking to some interesting bicycle people who've ridden Route 66 from Chicago to the West Coast. So Bicycling Historic Route 66 is the title of this podcast, and we'll be talking with Tracy and Peter Flucke. So let's go see who they are and what they have to say about riding all the way across the country. All right, so we've got Peter and Tracy Flucke here. They wrote the book, the two books. The first one they wrote was Coast to Coast on a Tandem. That was podcast 55. This is podcast 89, and we're going to talk about cycling historic Route 66. Why did you decide to ride these?
The first one, we'd been riding for years and years, and our family was our girls were getting older. We had a little bit of time. We also knew that we'd eventually be up against it in terms of being able to ride unsupported across the United States. So in 2014, we saw a window of opportunity. So that was our first cross-country trip, the Coast to Coast on a Tandem book. We rode from Bellingham, Washington to Bar Harbor, Maine. Took us, I think, 72 days, 4,362 miles, give or take a few. The following year, we hadn't learned our lesson, and we actually rode the Mississippi River. So went from Green Bay up to International Falls and then down to the southernmost point of Louisiana. New Orleans is very cool. The southernmost point of Louisiana is basically sawgrass and oil rigs. So just skip the last 90 miles. And then we'd gone east or west to east. We'd gone north to south across the country. So we needed to come up with a different plan, something to draw us. And the idea of historic Route 66 had always been intriguing to me because, Route 66 was one of the first times or one of the first highways that allowed people to go in a car from all the way out east to all the way out west. And being a bicycle and pedestrian guy, the kind of the tension point that created, we opened up the United States to some amazing travel possibilities, but we also unleashed the motor vehicle. And so for us to be able to kind of go back to that era, try to get a little bit of an idea what it was like during that time, was very, very intriguing to me. And somebody pointed out recently to me that us riding our bicycle across Route 66 was probably much closer to somebody traveling that route in 1926 in an earlier car than what people would imagine today. So that was sort of the draw for me. And I asked, and Tracy said, sounds like fun.
Yeah. So Tracy's crazy too.
Exactly. Yes. When he said, let's do historic Route 66 in 2016, I jumped on the back of the tandem and said, let's go. And how many years later? 6 years later, we finally decided to write the book on it. So Coast to Coast, or basically historic Route 66 is our story about traveling Route 66 in 2016. So.
Yeah, and I've had so much fun with it since I got it. Thank you so much for that. I'm dreaming of doing the MS 150 next year after my 80th birthday. So it's
nice.
One more, yeah, and we'll just keep doing until we stop, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, people always ask us, how do you bicycle all the way across the country? And I just laugh and say, one pedal stroke at a time. And I imagine doing MS, 150 at 80 is pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
And, I tell people, they say, oh, it's too hot to ride. And I said, no, let the bike do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you've seen in historic Route 66, it was unbelievably hot on that trip, and I decided that I wanted to ride it east to west because that's more historically not accurate, but I think traditional. The
Right.
problem is that in the summertime, going through the New Mexico, Arizona, frankly, any of the states that we went through, um, by noon it would be 90 degrees often, and then the headwinds would pick up. So, early in the day, we could make 15 miles per hour pretty consistently. But if it got much afternoon, it would be 14 miles an hour, 13 miles an hour, 12, 10. So, yeah, that we got really good at dealing with and managing the heat, and that's probably one of the things logistically that I'm most proud of, was our ability to work out those logistics and be safe and be successful.
Mhm.
Well, Tracy didn't have any headwind, right?
I did not. No, I just hid behind Peter and asked every now and then, "How bad's the headwind?" So, yeah.
Well,
No,
and
actually,
that's
I could feel it too. I mean, it was strong enough that it was sneaking around him and taking me out too. So,
one of the things I want you to talk about a little bit is the difference on riding a tandem and riding two singles, and how much difference it makes in a long trip like this.
Hmm.
riding a tandem as a stoker, so I ride in the back, which is called the stoker's position, and I have no control of the speed. I don't shift gears. I can't brake. So I have to have a great trust in my captain, the person on front of the bike. But I do a lot of other things that help us to get us across the country or across the street. I'm looking for vehicles. I'm letting him know if he can change lanes. I'm giving him route directions. I'm the navigator on the bike, so I'm the one that's telling him where to go, which obviously is important when you're bicycling across the country. So everyone, we both have our roles, and I always tell other women or other people that are interested in stoking on a tandem that they have to really trust their captain. Otherwise, they will not enjoy the back. They have to let the control of the bicycle go to the person in the front. Um, and I have no issue with that. Peter's a great captain, and um, I enjoy being on the back. I can look around a lot more than he can. So,
Okay. Yeah.
For me being on the front, it's a very interesting dynamic because there are times where we are in perfect synchronicity. I think anybody who's walked a lot or run or bicycled has had that kind of outer body experience where you're moving along, but you have no sensation of your legs propelling you. And it's even better on the tandem because that means that the two of us are in perfect harmony. That's the good part. It The bike going into a headwind is a dream. Nobody likes going into a headwind, but we all know that if you let up for a second into a headwind, you almost come to a dead stop or you feel like you're going backwards. But with the two of us on there, we only have the wind resistance of one person, and Tracy is constantly putting power in there. So, just like she makes us or makes me better in my everyday life on the tandem, I've got that kind of support, and I hope she has it for me. Now, it does get interesting though if we have a crosswind or a quartering wind, because the wind hits me and it hits Tracy differently. And when I get hit by the wind gust, what I want to do is just move the handlebars like we all do to straighten out the bike. But if I do that too quickly, then Tracy gets hit by that wind gust and it amplifies that squirreliness of the bike. So that honestly can get to be a real challenge. Sometimes I wonder what the heck she's doing back there. But I've learned over the years just to do my job and keep pedaling straight ahead.
Just just keep doing your job. You betcha. Yeah.
exactly.
So a lot of the people who listen to this podcast are bicyclists, but then there's a lot of them that aren't, and they don't necessarily understand why someone would want to ride for thousands of miles. Why someone ride for 10 miles? We had a situation where we had a law, we were talking about it, and somebody said, well, who wants to ride for 10 miles? You know, okay, we've got education here. Why do you want to ride for thousands of miles? What's there besides getting to the coast?
It's the adventure. We always say when you're riding a tandem or riding a bike, you don't have to look for adventure, it finds you. And it's very true on a bicycle. Besides just getting the adventure of biking and traveling that way, you also get to see more closely where you are. You get to experience it more closely. You hear it, you feel it, you even smell it. So, and you're going at a pace that you can really experience where you are. It's very different than riding through a community in a motor vehicle with the windows rolled up and the air conditioning on. You don't get a feel for where you are. So that's for me is what really excites me on riding a bicycle and riding it even just to work or to a meeting or whatever, or riding across the country. It just is that experience and that really feeling in the place that you are.
Tracy, there's some interesting studies they've done with kids and the way they get to school. If they ride to school and you ask them to do a map, they will.
Yeah.
If they're driven to school and you ask them to do a map, they can't do it. And it's like you've just lost all of that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm a village trustee for the village of Ashwaubenon where we live, and I bike to many of my meetings. And I biked there one night, and the village president and the village administrator were standing in the hallway, and they were asking me, why I biked in or why, I did that. And I told them, when I drive here, I don't interact with anybody. I drive, I get into the parking lot, I walk into the building. When I'm biking here, I'm interacting with my community, whether it's the person I wave at that's walking, or the other person that's biking, or even the person in the motor vehicle that's driving by that I make eye contact with. So I feel like I'm more a part of the community just by riding my bicycle to the meeting. And they both kind of looked at me like, yeah, I guess that's legit. You're getting more contact that way. So they don't think I'm as nutty as they thought I used to think I was.
But they're not riding their bike yet.
No, they're not. No.
We do have a bike rack though, so that's good.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress.
So it's a little bit hard to answer a question like that for yourself. So I was talking to my mother not too long ago, arguably the person that knows me better than anyone else. And I said, Mom, I don't know why I do this, why I ride my bike so much. I mean, there are obvious reasons. It keeps me fit. It helps me, keep my weight down. I don't spend a lot on gas. It's good for the environment, all of those things. And they're all true. But she surprised me because I thought we were going to have this long, in-depth conversation. And she just looks at me like, well, sweetie, I know why you do that. And I'm like, well, tell me why. And she said, because it's real. And that's one of the things that I think resonated with me more than anything else. Nobody can do this for us. I've heard marathon runners or runners say that as well. One of the things about a marathon is nobody can do it for you. There are no excuses. You do the training, you're successful, you're not successful, all on your own. And that makes it real. So when I open up a map of the United States or look at a globe, of the world, I can see the distance that we traveled under our own power, sometimes for better or for worse, but I own all of that. And it's an extremely powerful feeling. Somebody said to me one time, why do you ride your bike so often? And I said, it never, ever makes me happy to drive my car, bar none. Every single time I get on my bicycle, it makes me happier. So why wouldn't I want to do that for as many hours a day as I possibly can for as many days in a row as possible? That was the impetus. Every day we get up and go for a bike ride.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who just don't get that. But they're probably doing something else. They just haven't found the bicycle.
Yeah, and whether it's the bicycle or not, I don't know that we necessarily care. I mean, Tracy and I could bicycle across the country and not tell anybody, right? We don't have to go to public meetings to advocate to make it safer for people to ride. But we have that capacity, and it brings extra joy to our lives, being able to do those things. So we don't care if anybody rides across the country, and in many cases I wouldn't even suggest it. But if somebody decides to ride their bike to the grocery store to pick up that 1 gallon of milk that they want, or need, and they actually enjoy that trip instead of it being a hassle, that's a win for us. So, we just put ourselves out there. We try to lead the best lives we can. If somebody can glean something from that they think will make their life better, I'm good with that.
Okay, let's go back to the book um, and talk about the Route 66 trip. Give us a little bit of the logistics of the trip. What you said, okay, we've done this, we've done that, and everything else. Now we're going to do basically a historical trip, and that's what you named the book, Bicycling Historic Route 66. So, talk about some of the preparation that you went through. How long did the trip take you?
49 days.
49 days. Okay. And how long did the preparation take you?
That's an interesting question. So we have met people on cross country tours that literally went out with two buddies one night, were drinking heavily, and decided to ride across the country and went. So this is just the way we do it. Tracy and I both like to work out. We both like to exercise. So we typically start training for these things, 6 months in advance. We've worked with trainers in the past. By now, we've developed the expertise that we need. We'll work on our flexibility, we'll work on our strength, we'll work on our endurance. When we're in training, we very seldom will drive to the post office. It'll either be we're running there or biking there, and that's after we did all of our other errands by running and biking that day. But that's a good life for us, right? The reason that we advocate for being in as good a shape as you can when you're going to take on a challenge like this is it gives you options. There are lots of times where you might be able to go 60 miles one day, 100 miles, 120. Well, you're feeling great at 60. You go to 100 and discover that the gas station, the hotel, and the restaurant all closed. And we have the physical fitness and ability to push on for that next 20 miles. It just makes us much safer. Plus, we enjoy the trip more because we have some extra capacity to blog or to maybe walk down the block and check out something that we've never seen before. So that's the early, I guess, training part of it. Tracy's
Mm-hmm.
more in charge of buttoning down our day-to-day lives so that we can escape for that long.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just making sure we can pay all the bills. We got someone to take care of the cats, take care of the house. Setting all that up is kind of what I do, getting all the gear organized and ready to go, making sure we have everything we need. When it was our third trip, so it was that much easier to get it together because we had that experience from the two before. But it's still it's a fair amount of work when you're gonna leave your home for up to 2 months where we were
Yeah.
gone. So
The only suggestion I would make, though, Preston, not to steal our own thunder here, is when you take your tandem bicycle with 60,000 miles on it to the bike shop to have it checked out, because that would be prudent before you do another cross country trip. When they pronounce the bike completely healthy, but they ask you if you're going to replace the wheels on the bike, just say yes. Don't ask them if there's anything wrong with them, and make them prove to you that you should replace them. They're just right.
Just do it. Yeah. I don't know if y'all can see it, but I've got a tandem on my bookshelf
Oh, I see it over your
oh
shoulder there.
yeah,
right over my
nice.
shoulder there. Yeah. That is not just for y'all. It's always there. Yeah.
Nice.
So how old are y'all?
Me, I'm 61.
And
He's old.
I just turned 62 for the next 6 months, I'm going to get endless crap about my age.
Uh-huh.
I celebrate the 6 month mark so I can harass her for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was just wondering what's your next trip?
Oh, the funny thing you asked that because I've been thinking about it a little bit, and I would like to bicycle from Chicago to New York. We bought the maps before we did our 2019 trip because we had planned to go to the East Coast as well. And so I said to Peter just last night, I said, "Hey, I think we should do that trip in the spring." So I just pulled the maps out and I've been looking at those and trying to get my head around the logistics and how long it would be and all that good stuff. So hopefully in the spring we'll do that trip. And kind of preliminary thoughts are, we'll go maybe drive down to Chicago, then bike to New York, and then take the train back from New York to Chicago, and then head home from there. So yeah, so I'm kind of excited. We haven't had a long trip for a while, so hopefully we'll get this one figured out.
I was just going to say, as you know, we got tripped up a little bit because Tracy managed to get hit by a car 3 miles from home in 2018. So that took some rehab and some time. In 2019, we were planning a 7,000 mile trip and completed what, about 1,500. But her knee wasn't up to it yet, and she had some anxiety. In the meantime, though, she's gotten much better, much stronger. We have a new tandem bicycle, and you know that feeling when you get a new bike where you just get downright giddy. I know every time you ride it, it's like I absolutely love this bike. So that means that we should spend as much time on it as we can. Now, my only thing that I haven't started politicking for, but when we did Route 66, we could have started from Chicago, which is where the route starts. But we both grew up in Milwaukee, and Chicago's not much farther south, so we actually biked from here to Chicago. And I'm a huge fan of open up the garage door, get on the bike, and leave to ride across the country. So I'm gonna see if I can push Trace for another 4 days. There is a logistics thing because we'll have to figure out how to get back from Amtrak in Chicago up to here, but we've got kids and they owe us, so I'm going to go with that. Said nobody ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Just it's a dream. I never managed that in the States. I did some overseas, but I never was able to make those long trips here in the States.
Mm.
So I do them in little pieces.
Good for you. Whatever you can do. We ran into a gentleman on one of our trips, the Northern Tier actually, and he was biking the Northern Tier in pieces. He couldn't take that much time off, so he was probably took 4 or 5 years to do the whole route, and he was having a great time. His family was sagging him, and they were having a good time sagging him, and it's just a different way to do it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, one of my visions is the East Coast trip, the adventure cycling East Coast trip, and start as the leaves start to turn
Yeah.
up in Bahaba, Maine, and just
Yeah.
work my way down the coast, end up
Yes.
in yeah, Key
Key
West,
West.
Florida, and just do that. And I figure at 50 miles a day, that's about 2 months.
Yep.
So Preston, the reason you're seeing me on the screen laughing is because that was exactly my plan when we decided to do the Mississippi River. And so we went from Green Bay up to International Falls because we wanted to touch the northern border. And then the idea would be that we would follow the leaves all the way down. And we had some mornings in Minnesota that were 32 degrees right in there, which, we're from the Midwest. We can ride in that kind of temperature. And I'm glad we didn't start any later because it would have been much colder. But what happened was we got ahead of the fall colors and we literally missed fall that year. We just never saw a leaf turn. It was terrible. But we had a great trip, but it was like, so think very carefully about that. It worked poorly for me. I'd love you to benefit from my mistake.
Yes.
Yeah, and Key West is a little bit better than the tip of Louisiana.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah, I grew up outside of Baton Rouge, so That's home country, and there's some places there's not much there.
Yeah, that is very true. On Mississippi River, when we got further south, it was hard to find services and food and places to stay. And then we really couldn't even camp because they equated camping to vagrancy. So a lot of the the campgrounds wouldn't allow tent camping. So it was kind of tough.
Yeah, you got to pull a trailer,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
We need to invent an inflatable trailer so we could pull in, blow that up, and then we'd be good to go.
Good to go, yeah. So the next one is going to be Chicago to New York. Do that in the spring?
Yeah, I'm thinking the spring, maybe April, May, somewhere around there when the weather gets a little better. And I think I looked at it real quick. It's about 1,600 miles. So,
Okay.
maybe 3 weeks or so. Because we usually average about 60 miles per hour, 60 miles per day per hour. Yes, that'd be really fast.
I kind of laugh because we throw out numbers like 1,600 and 2,000 like it's normal, and then we'll be around normal people and we'll do that, and we'll suddenly realize they're all glazed over. So when Tracy said that, I know we're in safe company, and you also know us, and that's normal for us. But it is definitely a thing. On Northern Tier, for comparison, I think we averaged about 75 miles per day. But there it was, it was a coast to coast thing. We had our head down, and there's a lot you miss when you're going point to point because you're just driving yourself. And, our nutrition, I mean, it was good, but it wasn't necessarily 4,000 miles good, right? So it took us a while to get that nailed down. Our team, in terms of how we support each other, how we break each other down, that wasn't, as good, and we've gotten better about that. But, I don't know that we have a lot to prove anymore. So the 60 miles a day, allows us to hammer it out if we, want to put in 100, 120 in a day and then take a couple of days off somewhere else. Or, if we find something unexpected that we want to check. In both of our books, we have this sort of unofficial list of places we want to go back to someday, because literally it was 5 miles down the road and it's 95 degrees and we're gassed, and it's like we can't go there. It's just it's not safe. So we have places like that we're going to go back to.
Mm-hmm.
So how are the book sales doing?
They're going really well. We did our, what is it called? Book launch, our unofficial book launch at the Tandem Rally in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we sold a ton of books. Talk about your target audience with that one. So we sold a lot of our new books, and we actually sold quite a few of our original book, our first book. And then we did our official book launch here, and that was really busy. And so no, it's going really well. And it's also inspiring people to buy our first book too. If they haven't read the first one, some people will purchase both, which is nice, and read them both. So yeah, and we've already got some reviews back, and people that have read it and reached out and they're like, oh, it was so great. I like this part, or I like that part, or whatever. So it's nice to hear that people are enjoying it after you put that much time into it, and hope that they'll get something out of it and that they'll enjoy it as well. So,
it's scary because, we do the best we can do. And, we're bicyclists. The author thing was not our first thought. And so that's exactly why we worked with a professional publishing company, with an editor. We kind of stayed true to ourselves, and it's a small publishing company from Green Bay, Wisconsin. So the advantage of that is that we get really good advice. I mean, I don't know if we would have written the book in both of our voices. And in retrospect, to have a book about a tandem bicycle trip that's not written in both of our voices, you would have missed, a third of the trip at any given moment. So that was huge. The downside, though, is it's hard for us to get the word out about our books. Simon & Schuster is not jumping up and down going, read Coast to Coast on a Tandem or Bicycle Historic Route 66. So the word of mouth and just putting in the time and doing things like this with you is really what we have to do to get the book out there.
Well, we'll push out both the audio and the video on this one.
Thank you.
The audio gets more folks. The video channel I use has got about 116, 118 subscribers, and depending on what I put out, if it's nasty about, we have a intersection here that they really bollocksed up, and it's where the middle school kids cross a big road, and we put up a thing about that, and we got thousands of views and people sending it to the city saying you screwed up, so I'll take those. But yeah, but we do have a reach, and we might sell 2 or 3 books. We'll try that.
Yeah, that's okay.
One of the things that we've learned about writing a book is that you're just, unless you're that exceptional 1 in a million author, you're not going to get rich doing it. But as you know, I mean, we've been bicycle and pedestrian advocates for all of our professional lives. This is who we are and what it's about. So, we joke in the advocacy world that if you go to a meeting and do nothing else but stand up and say the words bicycle and pedestrian, you've been successful. So, most of the people that we try to interact with about why would anybody want to ride a bicycle, or what about those people that have no other choice, or how are we building our communities, all of those kinds of things, they very seldom have any kind of frame of reference at all. And I think that as practitioners, as people that ride a lot and have been successful riding great distances through communities we've never seen before, but also being professionals in this area, I think that people enjoy the book, but I also think they learn something about it, because I don't think we would have written it if we wouldn't have been able to cover kind of both of those bases.
And one of my great things that I talked about was the 2 voices.
Yeah.
This would not be the same book without the 2 voices, because they are very different.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an important part of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's funny because we always say, we're 6 inches apart on that bike, so we're very close together, but our experiences are very, very different. Peter we may stop somewhere. He goes in to get something. I'm standing out with the bike, and I have a great conversation or great interaction with somebody that I can share that he wasn't involved in at all. So you're correct. It wouldn't be a complete story without both of our voices, and we're both very different. I see things very different than he does. I'm more the empathetic, and I have more the feelings end of it, and he's more the let's go kind of, and the more factual end of it. So it's kind of a good mix. You get a little bit of both of us.
Let me give you an example. So we'll have days. I mean, Route 66 is really cool, right? But some of it is on the freeway because I-40 gobbled up Route 66. A lot of it, the original Route 66, would be the frontage road. Some places it's just this little road that the alignment forgot about, and you're off in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes the road's 18 feet wide. You've got 9-foot lanes.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Why don't we do that more often, Preston?
Yeah.
I'm just saying. But if I have a day where we're on an old piece of the road that's really starting to deteriorate, lots of bumps, lots of potholes, my life is 12 feet, or 15 feet ahead of the bicycle, because I can't turn the tandem like a normal bike. If I try to turn quickly left, Tracy just leans to the right, the bike goes straight. So it's much more like driving a semi-tractor trailer. I have to be really, really locked in and focused. And then we'll get to the end of the day and Tracy will go, "Oh my gosh, did you see that incredible field of flowers? Or did you see that really cool farmhouse?" And I'll go, "No, damn it, I didn't see anything today. The road was terrible." But she can give me that back, at least to some extent. And she also will know that that's probably the night she's got to figure out what we're going to have to eat, because I'm just trashed, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, 2 voices for sure.
Yeah. So she's seen those hawks circling around that you never saw.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, except they were turkey vultures, and I hadn't taught her that yet.
Yeah, don't stop and lay down. Yeah.
No.
Exactly. Yeah.
Although there were an awful lot of places on Route 66 where you literally could have taken a nap on the yellow line in the middle of downtown because the population was so incredibly sparse. You just weren't going to see a car all day, which is
Which is
cool.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got one road, it's called Old Highway 20, goes from Austin basically to the coast, through Houston to the coast. And they replace it with US Highway 290. But the places where it's left, and through the little towns where it's left, it is 18 feet wide with 9-foot lanes and no shoulder. And it's just delightful to ride on.
Mm-hmm.
Preston, I don't know if you've seen this, but the 100th year anniversary of Route 66 is going to be in 2026.
Okay.
And that was one of the reasons that our publisher pushed very hard for us skipping that middle trip and going right to the Route 66 book. But there is a lot of attention nationally and at the state level to try to, I don't know if even repurposes the right road, but Route 66 is kind of fighting for relevance, right? In this modern era of, super speedways, highways, major collectors and arterials. The main street of America is kind of being lost. But the way Route 66 was designed, being small, being narrow, and going right through all of these small towns, screams bicycling, right? It screams bicycle touring. And there are now federal and state grants which are looking to refresh, if you will, Route 66 more towards the idea of making it, bicycle friendly. Certainly they'll make it motor vehicle friendly, but that's for traveling, at low speeds, stopping at these little towns. So they're really looking at some of those gaps, some of those places that they need to refresh it. And I couldn't be more ecstatic. It's probably the perfect use for that corridor in this day and age. The people that are driving it in their, antique cars that occasionally blow a radiator hose. They need those towns as much as we do, and they need a break because the struts and the shocks are not as good, all of that kind of stuff. And those are the people a lot of times that we ended up hanging out with in these small communities. And it was a pleasure because they had really nothing but time, to talk. It was wonderful.
Sounds like a great time. And you're planning on the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Always got to
So
be planning on that.
I'm going to ask you, Tracy, you said you were a city official.
Yes.
Is that a job? Is that a volunteer thing? Are you getting paid for doing that?
It is an elected position. So I'm what they call a village trustee, which is similar to a city council person. And I have a 3-year term. I'm elected and I do get paid. I think I make maybe like $6,000 a year or something like that. So
Wow.
it probably
Yeah.
equates, we always tease, it equates to like 30 cents an hour when you count it all down.
Yeah,
But
that's what I was thinking. 50,
yeah,
30. Yeah, something in there.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, but yes, I've been enjoying it. I mean, the community that I'm a trustee for now, we moved here for my job when they hired me as a Parks and Recreation director. So I worked for them for 12 years as a staff person. Then I spent another 8 years as an administrator in a community down in the valley in the Appleton area. And then I spent another 4 years in a community in the Green Bay area as an administrator. So I have a lot of 30 years of government work. So as a trustee, I understand things maybe a little more than somebody else would because I haven't worked in the field for that long. So it makes me better able to understand what we're trying to do and working with staff and moving projects and things forward. I think a little easier than someone that doesn't understand how slowly government can work sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yes.
And Peter, what do you do?
So, about 30 years ago.
You're retired. You're 62. You're retired. You don't have to.
Yeah,
Right?
never. If you like what you do, you never work a day in your life, right? It's not quite that good. I'm glad I've been getting paid, but for the last 30 years, I've been running our family-based pedestrian and bicycle safety consulting business called We Bike ETC. As you know, my background was in Parks and Recreation. I was a Minnesota police officer and bike cop for a lot of years. Started to understand the three E's: engineering, education, and enforcement. Finally had
I
to
use that all the time when I talk to people, Peter, and you gave it to me. The three legs
well,
of a stool.
yeah, when
exactly.
things are working or when things aren't working, you plug that model in and you'll start to see very quickly what's going right or what's going wrong. So yeah, we've been doing that. Tracy started working with the business in 2014, which was huge because, I mean, if I do the best job I can, I'm going to reach 90% of the people that I'm talking to, but I'm always going to lose some. Just they don't like the way I look, the fact that I'm a male, the fact that I used to be a cop. Well, you put the two of us together, just like we do on the tandem, and we are just much, much more efficient and effective. In terms of retirement, we had our best year, I think, in 2019, just before the pandemic hit. And that's our best year monetarily, and it darn near killed us. And we finally started to reassess and say, hey, we need to do a little bit more bicycling and we need to do a little less work. So we're very, very selective now about the projects that we take. I have been, thanks in part to your assistance, been doing a fair amount of expert witness work, but I'm now starting to understand, I'm sure like you did, that they are paying you a large amount of money to do a very difficult job on their timeline. And so I'm backing off on some of that as well. So we do a lot more volunteer work now than we did before. We like using our expertise. But when you're a volunteer, if you decide to take a month off and go bike out to the East Coast, they can't really complain because you're not on their timeline.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that when I took this latest job with WAAO bikes. They want me to come to work.
Yeah. Don't think I wasn't laughing when I saw you were doing that.
But, I'm having a good time. It's playing with kids and bikes. They don't make anything but kids' bikes. And they're exceptional bikes. And so I'm having a great time. It's something, a product I believe in. And, I'll do it until it's no fun. And then I'll quit. And I can do that. So it's great. Yeah. Well, I really do appreciate the two of y'all, and I appreciate your book. It's both of them. I've actually got both books. And so I've enjoyed reading them, and I've enjoyed knowing you two. And I hope things go well for you in the future.
Thank you. You too.
We just put one pedal in front of the other and keep on going, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do. All right. Well, y'all take care and don't get too cold this winter.
Yeah, we'll try.
We'll be riding all winter and we'll do our part on the road. How's that for you?
There you go. All right. Take care.
You too.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I really love those two people, and it's fun talking with them. Someday I hope to spend some time riding with them. Look forward to seeing you again, celebrating differences. Make sure you subscribe down below, and we'll send you notice whenever we post another one. Good luck, and have a great day.